Monica Shortino. Welcome on behalf of the Collin County Business Alliance. The Collin County Business Alliance engages business leaders and fosters collaboration and stakeholders to drive regional impact in key areas, ensuring the vibrancy of our community's future. We're excited this year to be celebrating our 10th anniversary. It's amazing to reflect back and see how the county has grown. One of the important initiatives of the CCBA is our Collin County Votes Initiative. This initiative is to raise awareness and engagement in our local elections. This year, we're proud to partner with Local Profile to do an in-depth series looking at the candidate pipeline. Why do people run for office? How do you run for office? And how do we build a more diverse candidate pipeline? I'm thrilled to be talking to two education trailblazers today, former Texas Senator and Councilmember Shapiro and former School Board Trustee Missy Bender, to learn a little bit more about how they got involved in politics. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. Senator Shapiro, you served in the Senate for over 20 years and the City Council prior to that. Missy, you served on the Plano ISD School Board for 13 years. When did you first know you wanted to run for office?
Well, let me start by saying that my history goes way back. I will start by saying that my personal experience was back in 1975 when I was really involved in a lot of volunteer work in the community. And there was a woman on the city council by the name of Louise Sherrill. She owned the newspaper, and she decided that she was going to retire. So back then in 1979, that was considered the woman's seat. So we talk about gender diversity. I guess that was as early back as 1979 that they felt that a woman needed to take that seat. So I had several people that came to me and said, we think you need to run. Two men were already in the race, excuse me, and I jumped in with both feet.
The exact moment that I decided was in the fall of 2004. My daughter had started kindergarten and she was at Daffron Elementary, and I'd been volunteering at school, and I was sitting in the workroom in her kindergarten class, and I felt this incredible moment where I just realized I can help her friends, her classmates at Daffron, but why don't I just help all kids in the school district? I had a similar experience to a lot of the children that were her classmates, and I felt like I can make a difference.
I'm curious, there are so many different elected seats to go after, whether it be, your city council or school board or Texas state level. How did you guys decide which office to run for? Or did it decide for you? I'm curious.
Well, in my case, excuse me, in 1979, it kind of decided for me. A group of women came to me and said, you're the perfect person to run for this seat because of your involvement in the community. And as I went through 11 years on the council and 2 years as mayor, when the seat opened up for the Texas Senate, I was in a prime place as the mayor of Plano. And the district lines had changed dramatically. So Plano was in a brand new district, which went from Plano and a little bit of Allen, that's it, all the way to Tyler. And at that time, my very dear friend, Kay Bailey Hutchison, who was state treasurer back then, she and her husband contacted me and said, we've looked at all the numbers. Plano is prime for the Republican primary, to win the Republican primary, somebody from Plano, because of the numbers. I didn't know anything about the numbers. And they had already kind of scoped it out and said, here's what you need to do. It was a very interesting race because it was all the way to Tyler. So there was a huge swath of Texas that I really knew very little about, but learned very quickly. So again, I was in the right place at the right time. I think a lot of what you do in politics, I know that sounds oversimplified, but I actually believe you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right message.
So for me, it was just me deciding. I felt very connected to education because my own experience in Plano ISD had changed my life and then my family's life. After I graduated from college, then my mother went to college after I did, and she graduated. And I just saw how education, it's never too late to get an education for anyone. And I just saw it completely transform my whole family's life. So I just wanted to be a part of that and making that happen for others. So I stuck with it, and I'm still sticking with it. I'm still in that that same space.
I think a lot of people in the community are probably sitting in similar seats as you guys did when you first started that journey of thinking, we're coming off the federal elections, looking into our local elections, wanting to make a difference, wanting to see where their place is. I'm curious from you guys' perspective. We know running from office requires a lot of support from your family, your friends, your community. How do you start to prepare for such a journey as that?
Well, I'd like to believe that you don't just prepare and run immediately. I like to think that there is groundwork that's done. I like to think that there are people that that encourage you to run. Without a support system, it is a lonely, lonely place, and not a place I would suggest anybody go, because it's I used to say, haven't been in office for a couple of years, but I used to say that elections bring out the worst in people, not the best in people. And so it's a lonely place. And if you don't have that support mechanism in place, your family, certainly I had 3 small children when I ran in 1979. But it worked well for my family because we had city council meetings at night on every other Monday night. So my husband was at home with the kids, which helped a lot. And I had family in Dallas. My mother was very supportive and could come and take care of the kids at any time. So that support mechanism, particularly for women, is absolutely essential. I mean, you need that. There's a misnomer out there that you have to have money. And I really don't believe that. I believe if you've got that support system and if you've got the right message at the right time, that money will flow to you eventually. The campaigns now at the state level and the national level are out of control. The local level, it's not that way. And so it really is relationships, building those relationships first. And the idea that you could one day, wake up and say, I'm going to run for state Senate and run for state Senate 3 weeks later is not a reality. There's got to be a base there somewhere.
When you make this decision, it's not like this as much today as it was when I first started running back then. But, there are things that you should do first before you just haul off and go file, because one of them is certainly talking to your family, but you've heard us both talk about service to the community so that you can learn what is the community and what are the issues that are going on, so that you're not just making something up because you think it's, a popular message. And I developed a campaign plan. I interviewed people all across the community to find out what they were thinking, because I didn't have I wasn't like a known person, or I didn't have any name ID or anything like that. So I had to raise money. I had to figure out how I was going to spend money. So that's just to make a campaign work. But then you also have to learn about the issues of serving. You want to know what, if I am elected, or when I am elected, how am I going to start ahead of the ground zero? How can I know something so I'm not just a complete novice? So there's a lot of learning, in my opinion, or there's a lot of learning that I have to do when I'm going to undertake something like that.
How do we encourage that diversity in our elected officials and boards and commissions and those sorts of things? Do you have a point of view on that?
So I'm gonna start by saying that I think it's really important that all citizens always feel like they're being represented, and that means you have to have a diverse board of any kind, because once they feel they're not represented, they stop voting, they stop participating, and apathy, that old ugly word of apathy, sets in. If you don't feel that someone's there representing your perspective and your viewpoints, then it's very easy to just slide back and say, well, it doesn't matter. So if we really want to keep people engaged, and I think the CCBA, I'm very proud of the fact that the CCBA is working. I'm proud to be on the board and have been since the beginning, but that they're working to try to bring awareness, to bring education. So often, I think, in the business community, and certainly before the awful thing with George Floyd, we were not really listening. We were almost tone deaf. You feel like you think but you don't. So a lot of the experience that's going on today in the business community is to really be introspective and try to look into yourself and feel, am I really doing the best I can? Those kinds of things need to be repeated and understood. And it needs to be in every area. The disparity in gender, the disparity in race, the disparity sometimes even in age, believe it or not. That just needs to be, people just need to be more aware.
So this diversity question is a really, really important one. And, there are so many different kinds of diversity. Do you have, if you're serving on the school board, do you have kids in school, in the public school? Do you not? Do you have kids that went through? Did you go to school here? I mean, do you have a cultural background that's different than the other people that are serving? Is it more representative of those that are in the community? Like Florence said, children, even the classroom, they want to see their teachers. They want to see themselves reflected in their teachers. So there are so many operational things that businesses, organizations can do to make that happen. But specifically when it comes to running for office, I think that those established structures that care to do that need to reach a hand out to someone that's different from them to say, why don't you think about this?
How do we start to get people more involved, wanting to show up at the polls? How do we change that trajectory?
I wish we had a magic bullet that we could just aim at a target and say, here it is. It's just a difficult thing to do. I think I used to say when I was in elective office was the reason that they didn't vote is because they were satisfied with the city the way it was. And that's part of it. They don't feel that they're really, that being out there and being engaged, there's still that attitude, my vote doesn't count. Well, that's just not true. I mean, we've seen too many races that are by, 5, 10, 15 votes and somebody wins or loses. So especially at the local level. So it's just not true. My vote doesn't count. The reality is that you've got to educate. You've got to get them engaged in a topic of some sort that's of interest to them to make sure that they feel like that they're engaged in something that is meaningful to them. And then sometimes I think we just need to kind of tug at their heartstrings about being civically engaged.
Right now, a lot of people will say, well, I'll vote in the presidential election. What they don't realize is the most impact on their lives is actually at the local level. And so they are so busy with all the other things in their life, they're not paying attention. But they will pay attention when something happens that they're upset about, and then they're driven to the polls. Like, are you going to affect my paycheck by, the tax rate? Are you going to affect where my child goes to school? There are a few things that people really, really care about, and that will drive them to the polls. So in the short term, figuring out what people care about to drive them to the polls in a positive way would be a fruitful thing to do.
I'm curious, what advice do you have for someone who is thinking about running for office?
My only advice would be that you think long and hard about your support system first, to make sure that you have that support system, and then to really dig into some of the issues and make sure that those are issues that you care about. Because a phony is spotted very quickly when they don't either know the issues or care about the issues. And those that really are good at what they do are very passionate about the issues. So you asked earlier, why would you run for school board instead of city council or vice versa? It has to be who you are, and those issues have to be important to you.
I exactly agree with everything you said, Florence. And, for me, I'd sum it up this way. If you're going to run for office, then you better run to win. And running to win looks like this. Make sure that you have the support system and that your family supports you. Think about your base of support. Attend meetings associated with the organization that you want to be a part of. Volunteer in your community. Do your homework. Figure out how you're going to run a campaign. You better do all of that if you want to be a real candidate.
As we go full circle, we started the conversation, why I run for office. You're stuck on an elevator. Someone asks you, what's your answer? Why did you run for office?
I ran for office because my education in Plano ISD changed my life and my entire family's life. And I wanted to do that for all children.
And I think probably I've got two answers. One is the city council and the mayor, and then the other would be the Senate. And I would say that at the time when I ran for city council, I believed I had something to offer that was different from the other 5 people on the council, and that I wanted to be a voice. And I felt that it was important that I be the one that did that. On the state level, it was a little more difficult. And why I ran was probably because I felt that there were opportunities at the state level that I didn't have at the local level. And I was still enthusiastic enough to want to make a difference for my constituents.
Thank you both. We are so incredibly lucky here in Collin County to have both of you as leaders. The work that you've done over the years for our education system, for our local cities, our states, we cannot say thank you enough for that great leadership. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully it inspires people to think about their community journey in a new way, perhaps running for office, perhaps supporting local candidates, whatever that looks for. And folks, I think great advice. Thank you again. And that will wrap up our conversation for today.